The clock on the wall ticked with a hollow, rhythmic insistence. Jessica stood behind the counter, her hands resting on the cool glass surface, waiting for the final minutes of the shift to bleed away. Outside, the world was moving forward. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, lighting up with photos of graduation caps tossed into the air and friends posing in front of corporate office signs. She did not look at them. She kept her eyes on the store entrance, dreading the next bell chime. A customer approached, clutching a box, and asked the inevitable, "What are you studying these days?" The question hit her like a physical blow. Her throat tightened. She looked down at the floor, focusing on the scuffs in the linoleum rather than meeting the stranger's eyes. It was a question she had no answer for. She had left college mid-semester, her bank account drained to zero, and now she carried that absence like a heavy weight. Every customer inquiry felt like a reminder of a closed door. She managed a thin, practiced smile, processed the transaction, and turned back to the clock. 6 minutes left. She was trapped in the space between who she was and who she had intended to be, watching the seconds disappear. The bell chimed again. A man walked in, his presence immediate. He was a regular, known for owning several businesses in town, yet he carried no pretense of formal training. Jessica watched him approach the counter. He needed to resolve a complicated issue with a vendor, a task that would have flustered most, but he spoke with a steady, quiet confidence that filled the room. He did not apologize for his background or seek validation. He focused entirely on the mechanics of the solution, his eyes tracking the logistics of the problem with surgical precision. Jessica stood silent, observing the way he occupied the space. He didn't have the paper credentials she thought were the only keys to the world, yet he held the authority of results. That evening, the store lights dimmed, and she pulled a worn copy of Napoleon Hill from her bag. She opened it to a marked page. The words hit her with the force of an indictment. Faith is the starting point of all achievement. She stared at the sentence until the letters blurred. She realized then that she had been disqualifying herself before the race even began. She had been waiting for permission to start, while the man from the store had simply walked onto the track and begun to run. The heavy coat of her own doubt began to feel thin. The job boards on her laptop screen remained open for hours, but she no longer scrolled. She closed the lid and pushed the device aside. Her focus shifted to the store floor. She began to really listen to the people standing at the counter. A pattern emerged. Every day, at least 3 customers complained about the same flimsy latch on a common household item. They sighed, returned it, or walked away frustrated. Before, Jessica would have just apologized and processed the refund. Now, she reached under the counter and pulled out a fresh notepad. She wrote down the specific failure points of the latch. By the time she reached her apartment, the kitchen table was no longer a place for eating. It was her drafting board. She spread out sheets of paper, sketching crude but logical improvements. She spent her nights surrounded by manuals and scraps of metal, measuring tolerances and researching material durability. The house stayed quiet, but her mind raced with geometry and mechanics. She wasn't just looking at a broken product anymore. She was looking at a puzzle that she could solve. Her hands moved across the page, refining the curves and testing the tension in her designs. The shift was absolute. She had stopped waiting for an employer to notice her and had started building a reason for the world to notice her work. Jessica waited for the weekend. She gathered her family in the living room, clearing a space on the coffee table to set down the prototype. She explained the mechanics, the material choices, and the potential for a real market solution. She watched their eyes. Her father leaned in, looked at the device, and then looked back at her with a heavy, steady gaze. "Stay at the store, Jessica," he said, his voice dropping into a tone of forced practicality. He tapped his finger against the wood, pointing toward the security of her retail paycheck. "It is safer there. You have a steady wage. Why throw that away for a sketch?" Her sister joined in, folding her arms tight against her chest. "Don't risk what you have," she added. "The world is harsh to people who guess." The room felt smaller. The air grew thick with their concern, which felt more like a cage than support. Jessica looked from her father to her sister, seeing the wall they had built around their own lives. She felt the prototype under her fingertips, solid and real, while their words pushed against her lungs, making it hard to breathe. They were not just protecting her, they were asking her to stop. The doubt they projected was a physical weight, pressing into her shoulders, forcing her to choose between their comfort and her own conviction. Jessica turned from her family and walked into her room, closing the door until the lock clicked. She sat at her small desk and opened the government website. Her hands shook as she typed, the keys clicking loudly in the quiet space. She hovered over the final button for a long minute, her breath shallow, then pressed it. The digital confirmation appeared, a simple screen declaring her business official. She cleared a corner of her bedroom, stacking inventory boxes against the wall until the space felt like a warehouse. She launched the site, waiting for the pings of activity, the notifications of interest, the validation of her work. Days bled into weeks. She checked the dashboard at dawn, at noon, and in the dead of night. Every time, the numbers remained frozen. 0 units sold. The apartment grew unnervingly quiet. She sat on the floor among the stacks of boxes, the blue light of the laptop screen illuminating the room. There were no orders, no emails, no signs that anyone in the world cared about the solution she had built. The silence of the apartment was heavy, pressing against her ears, leaving her alone with the growing realization that she had risked everything for a void. Jessica leaned back from the laptop, the screen reflecting her own tired face. She did not close the browser. She opened the design files again. Every millimeter of the prototype was now a battlefield of adjustments. She took the few comments from the site visitors, people who had looked but not bought, and dismantled her work to address their concerns. She moved parts, changed materials, and resketched the base until her wrist ached. Each night, the kitchen table became a workspace of paper scraps and tools. When the design was tweaked, she turned to the keyboard. She drafted cold emails to anyone who might listen, her fingers drumming a frantic rhythm against the desk. She sent hundreds. One by one, she hit the send button. Watching the outbox fill up, she waited. The silence of the apartment returned, now punctuated only by the hum of the refrigerator. She checked her phone for notifications, but the inbox remained empty. No replies, no feedback, just the blinking cursor on the screen. She stood up, paced the small room, and forced herself back to the desk to draft another 100 messages. The work had no visible result, but she kept moving, her hands steadying as the hours turned into a blur of relentless, solitary effort. Monday morning arrived with a steady gray rain drumming against the window pane. Jessica sat at her desk, the laptop screen casting a pale light over her latest stack of revisions. She reached for her phone to check the inbox, expecting the usual hollow silence. Instead, a banner notification pulsed at the top of the display. A major creator had posted a video. Her product was front and center. She tapped the screen, and the dashboard refreshed. A single order appeared. Then, another. The counter ticked upward 5, 10, 20. The phone began to buzz against the wooden desk, a rhythmic, frantic vibration that did not stop. She stared at the screen as the numbers climbed. New orders flooded the queue faster than she could read the names. The silence of the apartment shattered, replaced by the relentless chime of incoming alerts. She stood up, her pulse racing, and watched the digital map fill with dots representing customers from across the country. The screen blurred with activity. She touched the keyboard, her fingers trembling, and opened the shipment log to see the list growing by the second. The void was gone. The phone continued to dance across the desk, a constant, physical pulse of success that demanded her immediate action. The surge did not stop. It deepened. Within weeks, the small corner of her bedroom transformed into a logistics hub, boxes stacked to the ceiling. Deliveries arrived daily, and outgoing shipments moved in a constant stream. Jessica moved through the space, her eyes tracking the ledger as it climbed. The digits on her bank account flickered past the 100 to 1,000 mark, then doubled, then accelerated until the figure crossed the $1 million threshold. She stopped one evening when the room fell quiet. She walked over to her desk and pulled out a stack of old, worn notebooks. She flipped the pages. They were filled with ink-stained sketches, crossed-out errors, and dates from years of silence. She traced the lines of a failed design from 3 years prior. The $1 million reality on her screen was not a sudden accident of luck. It was the sum of these notebooks. She stacked them neatly, the paper edges rough and yellowed. Every page represented a night she had stayed awake while the world slept, refining the product that now dominated the market. She looked at the screen again, then back at the notebooks. The distance between the two was not measured in money, but in the thousands of hours she had spent in the dark, refining her work when no one was watching. The conference hall lights were bright, casting sharp shadows across the stage. Jessica adjusted the position of the microphone stand, her movements measured. A reporter in the front row stood up, holding a recorder aloft. He waited for the room to settle before speaking. Your company dominates the industry, yet your name does not appear on any alumni registry. What specific degree provided the foundation for this success? The question hung in the air, a direct probe into the years she had spent feeling inadequate. Jessica did not hesitate. She leaned into the microphone, her eyes scanning the faces in the front row. She smiled, a small, tight expression that held no malice. I did not succeed because of a degree, she said, her voice clear and carrying to the back of the room. I succeeded because I refused to stop when the results were invisible. She paused, letting the weight of the sentence settle. The reporter lowered his microphone, his pen still. She had spent years believing that success required an external stamp of approval. Now, she stood in the center of the industry, proving that the most difficult work happens in the silence, long before the world ever notices the outcome. Jessica turned away from the microphone, the click of the switch echoing through the hall. She walked toward the edge of the stage, her footsteps steady on the wooden floor. Behind her, no one moved. The reporters, the industry leaders, the critics, they remained still, processing the finality of her words. She stepped down from the platform, leaving the brightness of the lights behind. She walked through the side exit and into the quiet of the corridor. The air here was cool, a sharp contrast to the heat of the stage. She had spent years measuring her worth against the expectations of others, chasing a standard that now seemed irrelevant. She reached the heavy double doors leading to the lobby and pushed them open. The lesson was clear now, stripped of all doubt. A diploma might open a door, but that was only the beginning of the path. It was the persistence, the refusal to yield during the years of invisibility, that kept her moving forward. She pushed past the doors and stepped out into the evening air, leaving the hall and her past doubts far behind her. She did not look back. She had arrived at the only destination that mattered.